Welcome to another episode of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, your home for the latest news and analysis from the world of college hoops. Back again are your hosts, Josh Burton, Phil Dexter, and Peyton Burton.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 132, and I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton. Joining me again today in this first episode of the Midweek Classic here that we are now doing for 2 shows a week on the Everything College Basketball Podcast is my teammates, Peyton Burton, Corey Gardner, and fellas, before you say anything else, I just want to let you guys know this and the whole world know. If there are 25 to 30 podcasters better than us, I'll kiss your ass.
You son of a bitch. That's exactly what I was getting ready to fucking do. I'm so mad. I had a plan. You fucking asshole. Wow. I agree, though.
Alike, man.
Yeah, I agree,
Great
though. True statement.
alike.
Hey, the story of Peyton Burton, always finishing in last.
What a great comment from IU's associate head coach last night after their win against Minnesota on Wednesday evening. We'll get into the IU game, wild and crazy one. It's always hard to win in the barn. We'll get into all that and more in this midweek episode. But before we do, as always, guys, this podcast is presented by a House Enterprise and in part with the House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com for more information. And as always, proud to let you guys know our title sponsor of ECB this year is Beauty to Beast Nutrition, located in downtown Edinburgh, Indiana. It's a healthy juice bar. Stop in, tell them the ECB sent you for 10% off your entire purchase. Go get you a healthy Skinny Shot boosted tea. Go get yourself a nice protein coffee. Tell them ECB sent you for 10% off. If you are in or located near the downtown Edinburgh, Indiana, great people to do business with. Happy to have them on board this year for Everything College Basketball. It is nice to do a midweek episode. I'm not going to lie. We mentioned it on episode 131 this last weekend that we will start doing 2 a week here. And it is nice because now we can lock in solely on certain topics and give a little more love to other things as opposed to trying to cover a whole landscape based in a week. We have titled this one, obviously, Trouble in Lawrence. We're going to talk all about the Kansas Jayhawks. We got a lot to get into, but I do want to open this show up. We kind of poked fun a little bit at the Indiana, the associate head coach, his quote, very quotable. The Indiana game we will get into. But, guys, I do want to start this show off talking Trayce Jackson-Davis. I put it on our Twitter, at ECB Podcast 10, and brought up the question that's got good feedback, asking, in your mind, what would it take for Trayce Jackson-Davis to catch up to Zach Edey in the Player of the Year race? Because make no mistake, I think we all agree that it is Zach Edey's currently, and then there's a big gap to second place. But in the last couple weeks, Trayce Jackson-Davis, in my mind, has caught up to Jalen Wilson and passed him for second place with his performances. So I will ask you guys your thoughts on the Player of the Year race. And what, in your mind, would Trayce Jackson-Davis have to do to catch and even pass Zach Edey to win the award at the end of the year?
Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think he just needs to continue out and just show that he's at this level continuously. I think the next few matchups against Maryland, he's going to have to ball out against Ohio State on Saturday, and then going into the big matchup on February 4th that everybody's really anticipating. I think that head-to-head matchup of that one and then the next one at the end of February are going to really decide that race for overall for the Big Ten.
Well, I was going to say, to your point, some of our responses seem to have the same flavor. Our boy Johnny Stroud said he's getting closer to it. The head-to-head twice still to come might be the deciding factor. At Big Bag Getta 2 said the head-to-head to matchup really the only thing he can do. Shout out our guy John Alden, the guy you hear in the voiceover in the intro here. He says be the better player when they face off against each other. Simple as that. At JBR Bracketology says Edey would need to get hurt/miss games. I think team success plays a role too. Really need to see IU cement itself as a top 3 team in Big Ten and for Purdue to slide a bit. He also posted the odds currently out in Vegas. Our guy Tony Patella said a miracle. and then there's other comments. But Peyton, it seems to be the common thread. Trayce continued doing what he does, and then when they match up head-to-head twice, outperforms Zach Edey.
I think he needs, not only does he need to outperform him, but I think they need at least one of those games, preferably the one in Simmer Hall. Because if he has a game in Simmer Hall where he goes for like 30 and 15, and Zach Edey only goes for like 15 and 12, 15 and 10, even 15 and 15, but Purdue still wins, and I think I still get the edge to Zach Edey for Player of the Year race. And as far as him catching up to Zach Edey, he's up to 4th now on my list. I still have guys like Brandon Miller and Jalen Wilson ahead of him, and obviously Zach Edey's number 1. But I think he's getting close. There's still a lot of season. There's still 2 months left in the season, and he definitely could catch up to potentially be 2nd place, or maybe even overtake Zach Edey in the Player of the Year race. But still a lot of games to be played, and let's not forget, I mean, he's played well to start the season, but he's having his last 7 games, listen to this stat, his last 7 games, TJD has averaged 25 points, 15 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 4.5 blocks in his last 7 games. Incredible stat. He needs to keep it up, though.
An insane stat, and I think a lot of IU's reemergence after their 3-game losing streak is on his shoulders. He is, ever since that fan, and I use fan with air quotes for us, those watching live with us on the Facebook, YouTube, and the Twitter, I use air quotes because remember a couple weeks ago that quote-unquote fan wrote him this nasty letter, blah, blah, blah. Ever since that letter, Trayce Jackson-Davis has been on another level, arguably the best player in college basketball in the last couple weeks. And his numbers, you just reel them off. They speak for themselves. It's very interesting. So real quick, I do want to hear you guys' Player of the Year race. If you had to name a top 4 or top 5, Zach Edey, obviously number 1. It is his to lose. We mentioned that. I personally think Trayce, for the moment, has passed Jalen Wilson for number 2, which would put Purdue and Indiana as the number 1 and number 2 candidates, which I don't know if that's ever happened. So I want to hear the rest of your list. Jalen Wilson's on there, Brandon Miller, Drew Timme. Is that kind of your guys' top 5?
My top 5 is Zach Edey 1, Jalen Wilson 2, Brandon Miller 3, TJD 4, and Bryce Hopkins 5th.
I'd say the only one that I have different is I have Edey as 1, Jalen Wilson 2, TJD 3, and then followed by Miller, and then you said it, Timme. I think Timme just is, a dominant college player out on the West Coast. I think, he's done a lot to be in that conversation still.
Yeah, it's an interesting race, and if Trayce can continue to put up numbers like he has been lately, man, it's going to be a hell of a battle down the end. I cannot wait till we get to that first Purdue-Indiana matchup in a couple weeks to dive into that full force and break down the individual matchups that it's going to win or lose that game. Let's put it this way. Indiana has as great a shot as anybody to knock Purdue off, but Purdue also has a real good shot of making another big win over Indiana. I cannot wait to get into those games. But let's start off. When we recorded on Sunday, we previewed a lot of the games coming up this week. There's been some big ones and some very interesting ones. Let's talk about the first one on Monday, this past Monday night, a few nights ago. Let's go to the Big 12. By the way, Peyton, let's talk Big 12 real quick. Because you look at that conference, we've talked about it for the last couple months. It's the best conference in college basketball. And you look at the conference race right now. There's a 3-way tie for first. You have 3 teams in Kansas State, Iowa State, and Texas at 6-2. And you have 3 teams tied for second at 5-3, with being Kansas. Who's the other 2? I just lost track. Kansas, Baylor, and
Kansas State. Iowa.
TCU.
TCU, yeah. Thank you. I can't believe I forgot that. But basically, one game separates the top 6 in this conference. Peyton, speak on the Big 12 for a second.
It's crazy. Texas Tech is dead last in the conference, and they're 0-8. They're 10-10 overall. No team inside the Big 12 has a losing record, which is just saying a lot about how tough this conference is. Because every night, it's murder's row. Every night, I said it on Sunday. You gotta play your best every night, because if you don't, you're gonna get knocked off. It doesn't matter if you're at your place, or if it's a home game, if it's a road game, neutral site, whatever it is. You gotta be at your best, because if not, you're gonna get beat. And it just shows. 3 teams right now are tied for first place, sitting at 6-2, and then right after that, there's 3 teams that are tied for second. second, or 3 teams that's 5-3. It's ridiculous. I mean, you still got teams like fucking Oklahoma State's 3-5, Bob Huggins, West Virginia's squad, who's still talented, 12-8 overall, is 2-6. Oklahoma's 2-6. This conference is just tough, and you got to play well every night. If not, you're going to get beat. And I just witnessed fucking Rodrigo equalizing the Madrid Derby, and I just lost my effing mind. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my reaction to this beauty. Shook the whole team and scored an outside the foot goal to tie it up. But yeah, Big 12's tough this year, man.
It's brutal, Corey. Your thoughts on the top 6 teams just being one game separating all 6 of them?
Well, and Peyton kind of touched on it. It's like no matter if you're at home or on the road, it's like, out of the top 6, every single team has a winning record on the road as well, except for the overall leader, Iowa State. And it's like no matter what, you have to bring your best, because it's no matter if you're home or away, somebody's going to compete and potentially knock you off. So, I mean, the conference, the top 6 are unreal. And, I mean, overall, all the way through it has a ton of talent and has somebody that's going to come out and compete. And it's like, it's amazing that Texas Tech is a team at the bottom at 0-8, because, I mean, they've still been in so many games.
Well, even look at a team like Oklahoma State. They're 3-5, but they just knocked off Iowa State. We talked about it on episode 131 on Sunday. They beat Iowa State at home, and they were in the Kansas game, and then they were in other games. There's not an easy win in this conference. And Peyton mentioned, I think it was last week on the show, it is a murderer's row in this conference. So let's just assume the top 6 have enough ground over a team like Oklahoma State or West Virginia, and this is going to be the top 6 in whatever order. As we sit here on January 26th, with still half the conference play left to be had in the Big 12, predict to me how the top 6 finishes in this conference. Let's go 1-6 here. Corey, we'll start with you.
I don't know if I even want to. I mean,
it's that's tough. That's fucking
depending on
tough.
the day. I mean, I still think Kansas State, is going to eventually kind of separate themselves and take overall number 1, in my opinion. I think they're still the top team. After that, it's a toss-up. I think Kansas is going to finally start clicking a little bit. I just don't know if they have the overall size to compete with some of the others. I think TCU is going to stay up there. In Texas, I don't know. I mean, man. It's like I'm gonna go TCU 2, Texas 3, Kansas 4. No, I forgot about Baylor. Man, this is hard.
Dude, it's
like
so
if Baylor,
I'll
Baylor plays like they do, I mean, they have the best backcourt. I mean, they're unreal.
Well, that's a great point, and we're gonna segue, but I'll give you mine real quick, and maybe it'll help you guys. The way they are playing, this Baylor team, after struggling a little bit early on, they have hit their stride, and we're going to talk about this Kansas win in just a minute. But the way Baylor's playing, and we've had this saying for the last couple of years now, you don't doubt Scott Drew. And the way Baylor is playing right now, the number 2 offense in America, the defense is better, I think, on the floor than what it's represented in the analytics, because they're 90th in defense on KenPom for adjusted efficiency. But I feel like on-floor product right now is a lot better. I think Baylor is going to do enough to win the conference now. I'm going Baylor 1. I think K-State 2. I like Texas 3, Iowa State 4, Kansas 5, TCU 6. And that's not a knock to any of them in any order. You heard me say Kansas 5. That doesn't mean I think Kansas is bad. I just think the Big 12 is brutal, and I think a game is going to separate your place in the pecking order. So I've got Baylor end up winning this conference. I love the way they're playing right now. Your guys' thoughts on that real quick before we move on?
Go ahead, Payne.
I think Baylor is playing really fucking well right now. I mean, Corey mentioned it. They probably have one of the in my eyes, they got a top 3 backcourt in the country. And I said that when the season started, that they had the best. You can say Houston, you say other teams, even like Texas has a great backcourt. But Baylor's, I mean, if Keontae George's not having a good night, you can always trust in your experienced players, Flagler and Cryer, to have a good night. Very curious if they get Jonathan Tchamwa back, if he's going to be healthy enough to play. I heard Scott Drew talk about it on Field of 68. Like, there's a potential chance he could come back, and if they do that, if he does come back, and if he's either 80% of what he was, that's still pretty damn good. He's a good defender and be able to lock up the paint. But as far as like the Big 12 rankings, I'm biased. Of course, I'm gonna say Kansas 1. I'm gonna go Baylor 2. And then after that, I think it's going to be interesting because Iowa State, man, I watched that game against Kansas State, and they're fucking dogs. They got a bunch of dogs on that team, and Iowa State ended up pulling a close one against Kansas State. But it's tough, man. You go either way you want to. You can say Kansas is fifth. You can say Kansas wins the damn league. You can say a team like Oklahoma State fucking gets hot and somehow gets up there and wins the fucking league. Who knows? It's difficult.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. But let's move to the Baylor game since we've been talking about the Baylor Bears. We alluded to it and previewed it on episode 131. Let's go back to Monday night. Kansas coming off of a week where they lose 2 in a row. Very unusual under the Bill Self era in which Kansas loses back-to-back games. They had a tough one. We talked about it. Peyton dropped a great line with Kansas, our Kansas, in reference to Baylor's week. Baylor holds home court, beats the Jayhawks to drop them the 3 straight losses in a row, 75-69. Peyton, your immediate takeaway from another Kansas loss.
If Baylor hits shots, they're Final Four good.
They're national championship good.
If they hit, the thing is, like, they didn't even hit shots. They went 9 of 30 from the 3-point line, 30%. Definitely not the fucking greatest, but they hit enough shots to where it felt like they hit like 15 plus in this game. They're that damn good.
Peyton, I put on our Twitter during the middle of the game, I said when Baylor was rolling in this game at one point, I said Baylor is cutting the nets down good right now. Like, they could forget just the Final Four. They're playing well enough at a high enough level, they can win the whole damn thing again.
And I mentioned, I mentioned earlier, Keontae George is like, if he doesn't have a good game, which he didn't, he had 8 points, 2-11 for the field, 0-5 for the 3-point line. He was in foul trouble, he had 4 fouls, but you don't necessarily need him to go and have a fucking great game because you still got Flagler and you still got Cryer. Cryer had 22 points, majority of these came in the first half. He was hot in the first half. In the second half, Flagler and Langston Love gave him some solid minutes. Jalen Bridges gave him some solid minutes. Both of those guys had 11 points apiece. That's 22 points for those guys. 9 rebounds for Bridges as well. They got enough talent, and defensively, I still think they need to get better guarding the perimeter. But if they hit 10 plus threes a game, I think they can get to the Final Four.
I absolutely do, because they have that experience, like the backcourt you mentioned. But Corey, do not undersell the value of a guy like Flo Thamba, the 6'10" senior. You know, his stat line's not going to be that impressive most nights. 4 points in this game, 2 rebounds, but his big ass being at 6'10" and an experienced guy, helping out on the defensive side, talking, helping his guard teammates through screens, helping be a big body to frustrate, especially a smaller Kansas team. He is such a huge piece, even if it doesn't show on the box score.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, he just automatically being in the paint and eliminating kind of the pick and roll action or the getting downhill. I mean, affecting shots and, dictating, kickouts, things like that. I mean, also forcing tough matchups on, guys trying to post up. I mean, he doesn't have to necessarily have the stat line to show it, but just his overall presence down in the paint is something that's tremendous for Baylor right now. I mean, the guards are getting it done, and with him down low, I mean, they are absolutely dangerous.
And real quick on Kansas, we talked about Sunday about DeJuan Harris not being aggressive enough, not looking to score. First possession of this game, DeJuan Harris has a wide open layup. He passes it, turns the ball over. First possession of the game, he had 4 turnovers, 2 points, 1 of 5 from the field. He had 4 assists, 4 turnovers. Not sure what's going on. I think he's trying to do too much. He needs to look to score the ball and stop turning the damn ball over so damn much. But Grady Dick played great. He had one of his best games he's had so far this season. 24 points, 8 of 13 from the field. He was hitting some shots. He was also driving the lane.
Quick release, too.
He was driving the lane. He got caught up in some mismatches on defensive, got some fouls, had 3 fouls in foul trouble, especially early on in the first half. But Jalen Wilson had another good game, 10 of 16 from the field, 23 points. McCullough had a double-double, 14 and 12. And Kansas was down pretty much this whole game until like under 16 minutes to go in the second half when we finally took the lead and went up 46-45. And then I swear to God, Baylor had like 5 8-1s in this on us in that second half, and they just stretched it, and we can never get it really close enough to make a single possession.
I want to ask you though, is that how frustrating is that from a Kansas perspective that arguably your two best players, Wilson 23, Dick has a good game at 24 points. You hit every free throw you took, 16 of 16 from the foul line. But your best two players go off for 20 plus, but you get absolutely nothing from basically everybody else and lose this game. What more can you do? Obviously, you need a guy like DeJuan Harris to be aggressive and score the basketball. But man, what else do you need from this team? And second part, you've seen a lot of Kansas fans frustrated on Twitter on Monday evening about the lack of size. You guys got destroyed in points in the paint. Talk about that a little bit.
It's definitely frustrating, especially a lot of those and ones. I mentioned to it in the group on a little group chat. Like every time they drive the lane, fucking the West would just call a foul on us, and whether it's a foul or not, they just call everything on us. And a lot of those and ones I didn't think was deserved, but we have to take care of the ball. I mean, 15 turnovers. Baylor had 19 points coming off turnovers. It's difficult. We're undersized. And you talk about the points in the paint. Kansas actually didn't do too bad. 28 points in the paint. I mean, that's not good, but it's not terrible either. Baylor actually only had 18 points in the paint, so we actually outscored them in the paint. But we got to take care of the ball.
Let me refine that. Okay, I misspoke as far as like points in the paint, but what I mean is Baylor got to the paint anytime they wanted because Kansas does not have 100%. A rim protector like normal. Let me rephrase that. Yeah. Baylor got to the paint anytime they wanted, basically.
Every possession, they got at least 2 feet in the paint.
And we'll get to the Kentucky game, but I know a lot of Kansas fans are like, if Baylor's doing this to us, what do you think Oscar's going to do? Kansas now lost 3 in a row, Peyton. Is it panic time in Jayhawk Nation?
No.
No, it's a tough stretch.
It's a tough stretch. I mean, look at who we've played so far. I mean, we had let's see, who did we play? We played Kansas State. We played TCU. We played Baylor. That's 3 top 5 or top 25 opponents.
But
right
it doesn't get any easier for you guys though. Kentucky and then Kansas State. Like it's getting to the point. And then Iowa State and then at home at Texas. Like it is getting to the point where you guys are either start playing better. You guys are going to get ran to the bottom half of the league. I mean.
I disagree on that because Pitt Houston in this fucking conference, whoever in this stretch, guarantee they do probably the same thing we're doing. I guarantee they don't come out fucking with more wins than they do losses. Guarantee it.
Well, no, and I think there's agreement to that too. But I do think there is something with the way Kansas is playing. I don't necessarily think it's the teams and the result. It's just the way that they are playing. Like you get these performances. It's not atypical Kansas. Like this is not, and it does not get easier. I mean, I think what Corey's trying to say is, on paper, if they continue to play at this level, there's a real chance, and I don't think it'll happen, but there is a real chance things could go real bad in a hurry. You're already at 3 losses. Say you lose the next 4, that's a 7-game losing streak.
There's a real chance of a dick down in Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think there is some cause for concern that they have to get the ship righted, and there's a good opportunity Saturday. We will get to that. Speaking of their opponent Saturday real quick, Kentucky, they're on the flip side right now. They had won 3 in a row coming into Tuesday night. We talked about it. Vandy's a tough place to play at, regardless how good or bad they are because of the floor and everything else that goes into it. This was the most complete Kentucky game I've seen all year. Don't care about North Florida. Don't care about South Carolina State. From top to bottom, this is the best Kentucky performance of the year. The basketball Benny lineup continued to play well. And then how good is it for Xavier Wheeler? He comes in, spells Kason Wallace. The speed and the tempo picks up. He makes good decisions. He made the right plays. He had a good game. And he also, to be fair, was involved with the basketball Benny lineup where he had shooters around, so it helped him out a lot. Xavier played 22 minutes in this game. He only had 4 points, but he had 5 assists in this ball game, made the right decision, had a steal. He looked good in this game. Oscar goes for 15 and 13, typical Oscar night. Jacob Toppin, double figures. Kason Wallace, double figures. CJ Frederick, double figures. Antonio Reeves continues his hot shooting. It feels like every shot he takes now is a make. He had 16 points, 2 of 5 from the 3-point line. This team, the ball was hopping. It was moving. Constant motion in the offense. It never stuck really to one player's hands. Defensively, they were connected. Vandy only went 6 of 17 from the 3-point line, shot 31% from the field. And Kentucky did this only shooting 2 free throws in this ball game. This Kentucky team, through the last 4 games on the 4-game win streak, looks like a completely different team from the team that we saw lose to South Carolina at Rupp. Guys, real quick, talk about it, and then I've got a quote from Xavier Wheeler after the game I want to describe.
Well, looking at the stat line here, this is for a certain Tar Heel in the back who wants to talk shit about Kentucky and their three-point rating. 38% from the three-point line, 6 of 16 from the three-point line. Very impressive, very good stat. Kentucky was hitting some shots. Very solid performance. You mentioned the double-double Oscar Tshiebwe had. Jacob Toppin also had a double-double, 12 points, 10 boards. You had 5 guys scoring double figures in this game. Antonio Reeves came off the bench, did what he did, 16 points. And you mentioned Xavier. I mean, he only had 4 points, but he had 5 assists. He took care of the ball. He had a couple turnovers, but you're bound to turn over the ball here and there, especially on the road. Played 22 minutes. Defensively, I thought he was pretty solid. And Kentucky's definitely looked better. The fact that they only shot 2 free throws and still won this game by fucking 16 points is just ridiculous. And Kentucky, I mentioned it last week, or I mentioned it Sunday, they're starting to turn the corner. I don't know if they fully turned their whole season around. We'll see in Rupp Arena what they do against Kansas coming in. But they're heading into the right direction.
No, you kind of mentioned it, and it's like, the craziest thing is Vanderbilt turned the ball over 4 times, and Kentucky still flew around, defended the ball extremely well, forced them to shoot, poor from the field. I mean, and Kentucky shot lights out. I mean, the fact they were 56%, and even though 38% from 3. I mean, but no, I think Wheeler was a big difference maker here. I mean, 5 assists, moving the ball around, overall just kind of directing the offense, and he took care of it. I mean, five assists on 2 turnovers, is something to be had. I think that there's a full foot around the corner now for Kentucky. I think Saturday will really decide even more.
And guys have defined their roles. They're playing harder, the ball's moving, and guys define their roles, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And speaking of Xavier, it's not been easy. I know it's not been easy on him to go from playing 35 minutes a game to barely playing at all, and that's why everybody's been really happy for him. Plus, he got to play with the good lineup. He didn't get stuck with Lance Ware and Oscar and guys who can't shoot. He got to play with the good lineup, and it showed what he can do, and we've said last week, Xavier needs to be on this team and play some because he's going to be invaluable. Real quick, Xavier said after the game, this is Xavier Wheeler on accepting his role now. Those guys, and this is a direct quote, by the way, those guys who've been playing the past couple of games are the guys who've been winning games. That's the group that went and popped Tennessee. At the end of the day, we're good at Kentucky, or we're at Kentucky. I'm playing with some really good players. Sometimes that's okay. You got to learn to live with that and learn to grow from it and be mature about it because those guys deserve to play as much as anybody else. Those guys are fighting in practice, working their tails off, paying attention to details. They deserve that. Today, it was just my turn to kind of give us some energy. I did that, but you got to give all the credit to the guys or to these guys because they were the ones who were in there when I wasn't. What a mature, even if it hurts him deep inside, what a mature, great thing to say from Xavier Wheeler. And I think quotes like that are exactly why Kentucky has turned the corner. Let's go to the Xavier game. Xavier sweeps UConn. They go into Storrs, Connecticut to the Gampel Pavilion, beat UConn in a really good game, 82-79. Fellas, UConn a month and a half ago looked like one of the best teams in the country, unbeaten, beating everybody by double figures. Their defense looked like the best in America. And since then, they have kind of fallen off of a cliff. They've got 6 losses now. I think they've lost 6 of the last 7 or 8 games. They have kind of taken a nosedive, but Xavier's shot up and the best team in the Big East. Your guys' immediate thoughts on this game from last night?
I thought Connecticut actually looked pretty impressive, despite only losing by 3. We gotta keep in. We gotta keep in mind.
15 and fought back.
Yeah, they were down. The largest deficit was 17 points second half with 18:22 to go. 35-18 they was down, and they fought back. They scratched. Oh, that's what I meant. They scratched and clawed their way back and ended up making this a close game and had a chance to win it. It's just a guard play. I mean, Jordan Hawkins had 28 points. 28 points. He played amazing. He ended up fouling out, but he still played really good. Tristan Newton, even though he had 23 points, this dude had 5 turnovers. If you're the starting point guard, you gotta take care of the ball. We just mentioned Xavier Wheeler, how he had like 5 assists, but only a couple turnovers. This dude had 5 turnovers with only 4 assists. He has more turnovers than he did assists. And you're a starting point guard. That can't happen. The guard play has to be better than that. But Xavier, I mean, Sully Boom, Colby Jones, Kunkel, This team's so fun to watch. Offensively, they're just so great. They put up numbers, and it's crazy to say that a Sean Miller coach team is better offensively than they are defensively. It's crazy to say, but hell of a win for Xavier, and I'm pretty sure we all called this.
Yeah, and they're down to the. You see, only 7 guys played, but they all played big minutes. At least 20 minutes. Desmond Claude, the freshman, played 20 minutes. He's got his rotation down, Corey. They are playing lights out. Sully Boom is going to turn out to be one of the best, if not the best, transfers in America this year. 21 points to lead the Musketeers last night. What a game. Xavier is the best team in the Big East, leading the Big East Conference right now. And I think Xavier, the way they're playing, Peyton mentioned their backcourt. They've got 2 studs in the front court. Xavier in the right matchups, if they can continue to stay hot, this is a Xavier team that could be outside Final Four good.
No, 100%. I mean, they're getting to the point where they're getting really dangerous. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders. I mean, I think UConn played their best game that they've played in a while, and they still couldn't get a single lead. I mean, they didn't have a lead the entire game. I mean, yeah, they battled back after being down 17, but it's like, I mean, Xavier from, front court to back court, I mean, they're firing on all cylinders. And they're going to be exciting to watch as they come down the final stretch of the last month and a half of the season going into the conference tournament. I think they make a run when it comes to March Madness time for sure.
And you look at, we remember when Connecticut started to lose, when they actually lost to Xavier for the first time, then turned around and followed up with the loss to Providence. We mentioned that Connecticut kind of fell in love with the 3-point shot. They did hit 10 in this ball game last night, but they took 28. And I know it's a good little trade-off. 10 of 28 is not terrible. But you go back to their losses, they're shooting a shit ton of threes right now. And they're hitting 35%, which is average. They're 103 in the nation in that aspect. But, yeah, they've kind of just fallen off the cliff, basically. Like, they've got 2 wins in the stretch. They beat Creighton at home, and then they blew out Butler on Sunday. Where does Connecticut go from here? They do have a chance to get right. Their next 2, they've got DePaul and Georgetown away. By the way, shout out Georgetown. Broke that 34-game winless streak against other Power 5 or Power 6 schools, 29 straight Big East losses. They broke that the other night, beating Georgetown, or DePaul, should I say. So shout out Georgetown. But Connecticut, they've got DePaul, Georgetown coming up, and then the schedule gets hard again. Marquette home, at Creighton in the return leg, Seton Hall, Providence, St. John's, and in with DePaul and Villanova. What do we make of Connecticut the rest of the way?
You kind of mentioned it. I mean, the biggest thing was in the 2 games they won, they limited the 3-point line or the 3-point shots and, and spread the ball around, kind of got into the paint, did some other things. And, they kind of used what they had against Butler to be, kind of dominate that game. It's like they almost need to get back to that kind of basketball that they showed early on and get away from falling in love and being a stationary offense that's, trying to, force up a lot of shots from outside the 3-point line. Like you said, there's a couple games that they need to really make a statement and kind of build some confidence on. But I mean, Marquette's is as tough as anybody in the conference right now as well. I mean, it just doesn't get any easier for them after those couple games, and they really need to separate themselves.
No, they don't. But I tell you, another team, we mentioned Kentucky's on a 4-game win streak and has gotten hot at the right time. Another team that's gotten hot, Corey, are your Indiana Hoosiers, coming off 3 straight losses themselves. Kind of the situation Kansas is in right now. They lost to Iowa after being up 21. They lose to Northwestern at home. They take the loss to Penn State, where they just got ran out the gym. Since then, they've beaten Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, Minnesota. The most recent one was last night in the barn, playing a Minnesota team that's struggling at the bottom of the conference. They were down to only 8 players. 2 of their better players, especially their best big man, Dawson Garcia, was out for this game. On paper, Indiana should have blown Minnesota out, but again, it's at the barn. It's a tough environment to play in with the elevated floor and everything that goes into it. Indiana jumps out to a lead, blows the lead, and did everything they possibly could to lose this game. And I think in years past, they would have lost this game. But there's something different about this Indiana team now. They've got Race Thompson back. They made some key plays down the stretch against the 2-3 zone of Minnesota. Trace Jackson Davis, we talked about him at the top of the show. Unbelievable in this game. Unbelievable. Crazy stat line from Trace Jackson Davis. He finishes with 25 points, 21 rebounds, and 6 blocks, especially down the stretch. Corey, talk about your Hoosiers almost blowing the lead and then with the resolve to come back and win a game like this to move the win streak to 4 in a row.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Minnesota. All credit to them. They came out and I mean they battled their rear end off. They did everything they could to win this game. They hit a couple shots when they needed to. I mean, they still only shot 25% from three, or 20% from three, I think it was.
Yeah, 5 of 25.
Yeah, 5 of 25. And I mean, but it was like when they needed a big shot, they hit it, or they got into the paint. And I mean, I don't know. The refs, in my opinion, weren't the best. I mean, I thought there was a lot of foul calls that guys are off balance, falling off, and kind of, on their way to a travel situation or something happening, and they got bailed out with a foul call and got sent to the line. But here and there did that. But I think having the Mike Woodson out also was something that really dictated the game. Also, I mean, just it didn't seem like the substitutions were very well ran. There's kind of comments down at the end of the game after the 25 to 30 players better in the draft. But the biggest thing is Malik had his best game of the year and doesn't play in the entire second half. He had 10 points in the first half, was in foul trouble, or wasn't in foul trouble, had one foul, was finally starting to defend. But we kind of mentioned also TJD. Wow. I mean, he is flat out playing his rear end off on every aspect of the game. I mean, he's scoring at the offensive end. He came up with that huge cut through the lane that Race Thompson fed him to kind of take the lead. And then after that, Indiana kind of sealed the deal. But I mean, even on the defensive end, he blocked shots, he dictated or changed shots. I mean, and I tell you, there was a couple times Minnesota hit some threes or hit some jumpers that almost touched the rafters. I mean, over top of him. But I mean, he just does so much to change the other team's entire game plan.
Yeah, and of his 6 blocks, speaking of Trace, I think 4 of them came down that final minute where Minnesota tried to get a layup and Trace was there to deny them. Jamison Battle, I think you mentioned him, 20 points for Minnesota, was really trying his hardest to pull off an upset here. Peyton, your thoughts on Indiana, because they did jump out to a lead, should have won comfortably, blew the lead, and then within the last minute and a half, 2 minutes of the ball game, stepped up on the defensive end first and foremost and figured out the zone late with Trace and was able to steal a win.
Can we talk about, Corey mentioned the refs, can we talk about that final possession? I think Race Thompson got fouled after TJD dropped it down low to him. And because Minnesota was up 57-56, and Race Thompson, I think, got fouled. He went to the free throw line, made the first one, tied it up 57-57, missed the second one, and that's when, I don't know how the fuck you let TJD, who already has like 21 rebounds in this game, I don't know how the fuck you allow him to get that offensive board, because that's what got them the fucking lead. It was 57-57, Thompson misses, TJD gets the rebound, goes up, could have been an and one, by the way.
Yeah.
Could have been an and one, goes up 59-57, and I looked at the replay, and I was watching the post-game conference and shit, and Fox Sports was doing their little post-game shit, and they was talking about, like, that's probably not a foul, not in the Big Ten. And I think it was close. I definitely seen contact, but it's not something I would, say it cost Minnesota the game or anything, but I think Minnesota had a chance to fucking win this game, put it away. They were up fucking like 4 points, I think. Indiana ended the game with like a 7-0 run or something like that. I think IU played well, especially in the second half. Once they started figuring out that zone, three-point shooters going to bite them in the ass. They need to start hitting consistently from the three-point line.
Well, hold on. I was going to say, actually, they're 29th in the nation in three-point shooting. They're shooting 37.7%. What they don't do, and we've talked about this, is they don't take a lot of them. As far as point distribution, percentage of total points, Indiana is 321st in the nation in that aspect. Only 24.9% of their total points come from the three-point shot. So what that means is they don't shoot a lot of them, but they make a pretty good amount that they do shoot, if that makes sense. I would like to see it number a little higher, but
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I do want to shout out. I mean, Miller Kopp in this game. I mean, he's gotten a lot of criticism late that he's not looking to shoot. He's not looking to take advantage of opportunities. He came out, had 6 out of the first 10 points for Indiana. I mean, and he continued to defend well. He had that defensive rebound that he dove to the floor, got the timeout call right there at the end. That kind of dictated the the final last little bit of the game as well for Indiana. I mean, he stepped up in a lot of different ways that we needed, and I mean, he just continued to kind of solidify himself as a kind of a specialist and a leader on the floor. And I mean, he definitely made the plays right there at the end.
Corey, looking ahead real quick, Indiana, they've got 2 more games before the first mega Purdue game at home in Assembly Hall. This Saturday, they play host to a very struggling Ohio State team who went to Illinois the other night and took a loss. They are struggling. I think they've got 8 or 9 losses on the year. You have to, in my mind, you have to get that one, but you also got to understand Ohio State's going to be hungry and desperate for a win. Then you go on the road at Maryland on the 31st next Tuesday. What is your outlook prior to the Purdue game? Do you think Indiana needs both wins, obviously? Just kind of real quick, because if they win, that'd put them on a 6-game win streak, both of them, and put them at 16-6 going into Purdue. Great spot, not only for the tournament, but for that elusive double bye we keep talking about in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, they're sitting in 5th place right now. I mean, behind Northwestern, Michigan, Purdue, and who's the last one? Rutgers, yeah. And so, I mean, they absolutely need to take both of those. I mean, the High State game is at the Assembly Hall. Sorry, let me rephrase that. But I think, I'm not as worried about that one as the Maryland game. I mean, Maryland and Indiana has been some really good games, some really good matchups. I mean, all the way dating back to the national championship. And that one's going to be the really struggle. I just worry that, I don't want us to, go into that game and kind of start looking ahead to Saturday. I still would love to see us take care of business and stuff, but I don't know which one I want to be on. If I want to be riding a 6-game win streak to be coming in to Purdue, or if I would rather drop that one game right before and come back hungry and ready to set ourselves back for a victory. So either way.
I have never bought in, by the way, didn't mean to cut you off. I've never believed in that scenario where you hear some people like, oh, the coach he wanted his team to take a loss because it refocused. Yeah. I'm sorry, but if you don't have the competitive drive to be hungry to win every game, what the hell are you doing? And this is across all sports. I want to be on a 6-game win streak if I was you. So fuck that losing shit. Let's start rounding this show out. Let's turn our attention to Saturday. Real quick, the Big 12 SEC Challenge. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but Tennessee, Texas, we previewed it back on episode 131 on Sunday, fellas. Texas at Tennessee, I think all 3 agreed it's going to be a defensive slugfest. Tennessee destroyed Georgia. They've been just whooping everybody's ass since Kentucky beat them. Texas, obviously, in a tougher conference in the Big 12. Has your thoughts changed at all from Sunday regarding this game?
I still think I'd still stick by my prediction. I think overall I'm still going to hold strong with what I went on with the Tennessee win.
Yeah, nothing's really changed for me. I still think Tennessee is going to hold court and defeat Texas. I just hope it's a better game than it was fucking last year. Last year, I forgot who won, but I know it was like in the low 50s. Texas won. It was 52-51, and it wasn't that exciting of a game.
It was ugly. Better. And this one's going to be brutal, too. You already know it. But Tennessee, man, ever since that Kentucky loss, like I said, they've just been whooping up on fools. Let's finish the show out though on the Kentucky-Kansas one. We did a better preview back on episode 131. Go check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. But now with Kansas on a 3-game losing streak, Kentucky on a 4-game win streak. Peyton, your one biggest concern now, after you've seen the Baylor game, going into Rupp Arena on Saturday, what concerns you the most as a Jayhawk fan?
Oh, fucking hell. I mean, there's a lot of them. But if I had to narrow it down to one thing, I kind of talked to you about it yesterday or Monday after Kansas lost to Baylor. It's going to be our fucking undersized front court. If I'm Coach Cal, I have Oscar Tshiebwe touch the ball every fucking possession down the floor. Because our biggest problem that happened in that Baylor game, happened in the TCU game, happened in the Kansas State game. Our biggest problem is we're so undersized on our front court, and we're playing a team that has a dominant big man like an Oscar Tshiebwe, like an Eddie
Lampkin. Offensive rebounding team in the country.
If we're playing a dominant big down low, it draws so much attention because we're so undersized that we don't have a David McCormack, we don't have a Landon Lucas to match up with them down low. So we have to bring so much attention down to the paint, and that's allowing guys like LJ Cryer to go off from three-point line, and that's the reason why we're not defending the three, by the way. I forgot what the stat was you mentioned last or Sunday, how much the percentage of teams are shooting against us from the three-point line, but I know it wasn't good for us. At least I think it's 36% from the three-point line that we're getting.
It was something like 37, 38%.
But that's the big reason why. Like, if we had a David McCormack, if we had a Leland Lucas, Udoka Azubuike, if we had someone who can match up with Oscar down low, one-on-one, that way we don't have to try to double team him or focus so much on bringing so much attention down to the paint, and I think that three-point line, I think we'd be able to guard the three-point line a lot better. But that's my biggest concern is our front court.
Yeah, Corey, I think the consensus is that Oscar, whether Kentucky wins or loses, I think everybody expects Oscar to have a monster game, like another 2020 type ball game here, because like Peyton mentioned, Kansas has nobody inside. To me, Kansas's guards have to dig down and help out. They have to, and you can't, especially in this quote-unquote basketball Benny lineup with a lot of shooters out there, you cannot leave C.J. Frederick and Tony Reeves, but you're going to have to pick your poison, and KJ Adams is going to have to figure out a way to defend Oscar without fouling, which I don't know if it's possible enough for him. We've seen him be in foul trouble before. KenPom's even flipped. Remember last week we said KenPom had Kansas favored 72-70. After the loss to Baylor, it is now Kentucky winning 71-70. Corey, has your thoughts changed on this after watching Kansas go down 3 games in a row to Baylor?
Yeah, no, I took my bad beat bet was Kansas was going to win 2 games this week, and I'm flipping. I think there's 3 key things. Monday showed that, no matter if Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick can have an absolute phenomenal game between the two of them, Kansas just can't get the job done with anybody else. I think the overall size of Kentucky down low with Oscar is going to be a dictating factor that you already mentioned, that guys are going to have to cheat down. And Kentucky, if they continue playing with that lineup, is just getting to be dangerous. So I think those 3 factors, I think, I'm flipping from what I said. I'm going to take my bad beat loss, and I'm going with Kentucky in this one. And I hate to say it as an Indiana fan.
Well, obviously the interior play is going to be huge, but I look for Bill Self to mix it up. I do. I look for him a triangle and 2, box and 1, some kind of gimmick to slow Kentucky down. Kentucky on their side have to take care of the ball, have to hit shots still, because it doesn't matter how good Oscar plays if you turn the ball over and you don't hit shots, because Kansas is still good enough to beat you regardless. Let's make no mistake about it. And I do, because there's this common theme year after year, game after game, that an opposing player comes in Rupp Arena and goes off. And that's going to be either Jalen Wilson or Grady Dick. You give them to one, you can't have both go off. But I think Kentucky has to take care of the basketball, hit some shots to really put pressure on Kansas, and hit your free throws down the stretch. I think Kentucky actually wins this game, which is crazy if you said 2 weeks ago that this would happen, but the scripts have been flipped in this movie here. I do look for Kansas. If they win, obviously you're going to need Wilson. You're going to need Dick to play well and hit shots. But if Kansas wins this game in Rupp Arena on Saturday evening, I do think that they need a guy like McCullough or DeJuan Harris in particular to have a big game. And a big game could be 15 points, 8 rebounds, a steal or 2, a couple assists. But they're going to have a big game to win. Hey, Peyton, defensively real quick. Johnny, our friend Johnny, and I have been talking about this matchup, analyzing it all week, just going back and forth. He asked me who I think Kentucky is going to have guard Jalen Wilson. And I think for the majority of the game, you're going to see Jacob Toppin on him. Who do you think matchup-wise, what do you think matchups for both ends are going to look like individuals?
Oh, shit. I think probably majority of the game, Toppin's going to match up with Jalen Wilson. But it wouldn't shock me if fucking Toppin matches up a little bit with Grady Dick. Because obviously Toppin's a lot bigger than Grady Dick. Grady Dick going to the ball, going to the lane, he's not strong enough to hold a guy like Jacob Toppin off, so Jacob Toppin can obviously bully him. Toppin and Wilson, that's a little bit, it's not that terrible of a mismatch size-wise, so they're pretty close in size and statue. So, but I think the majority of the game, Toppin will guard, especially in the first half, he will guard Jalen Wilson.
And I think I think we see Toppin on him, but I also think could see some matchups of Johnny mentioned he thinks Kason Wallace will be on Dajuan Harris. I don't think so as much. I think they're going to put Kason on either Wilson or Dick for a better defender, because if Dajuan's not going to shoot, you don't got to guard him that much. Look, I'm just being real. So I think CJ Frederick guards him some, and you kind of match up around that. Peyton, real quick, on the Kansas end of things, who does a guy, because we know Kevin McCullough is a great defender in his own right. If you were Bill Self, who would you put Kevin McCullough on, and who would you put Dajuan Harris on?
I'm putting Harris on, start the game, because obviously if they do that starting lineup they've been doing, I think Dajuan Harris needs to guard Kason Wallace. But when Antonio Reeves comes off the bench, I think Dajuan Harris needs to switch on Reeves immediately. I think Kevin McCullough needs to guard Frederick probably the whole game, shut his ass fucking down.
Face guarding the whole time.
I think Dajuan Harris needs to guard start the game. He needs to guard Kason Wallace. Once Antonio Reeves comes off the bench, he needs to guard Antonio Reeves. And if there's ever a lineup to where Antonio Reeves and Kason Wallace is not on the floor and they just have Sahvir Wheeler with whoever the fuck they have on there, then I think he needs to guard Sahvir Wheeler, because I think he can force him into a lot of turnovers if he speeds his ass up. But if you have Sahvir Wheeler on the floor, you got to at least put Reeves or Frederick on there with them.
You got to have at least one of them out there at all times. And here's what we're talking about, all these matchups, fellas. Here's the thing, the X factor, because he's been playing so good in this win streak that I think really hurts Kansas more than Oscar. As long as he plays like he has been, we're talking about all these mismatches or potential, matchups and switches. Who the hell's going to guard Jacob Toppin? Because his mid-range and his ability to get to the dunker spot has been unbelievable. I think he's averaging like 17.5 across the 4-game win streak. If the trends continue, I think Kansas is just at a mismatch on the defensive end right now. Offensively, they're going to score points. I think defensively, they're going to have to just battle their ass off and hope Kentucky doesn't get a whole lot of offensive rebounds, which, again, Jacob's been averaging like 9.5 boards during this win streak. Corey, your thoughts on the mismatches and defensive struggles and all this shit before we get out of here?
Yeah, I just think it's a bad matchup for Kansas right now, just the way they're playing. I think the size of Kentucky, and I think, Kentucky has the three-point shooting to really make them pay. I think they're going to have to start collapsing down. They're going to start helping out.
Say that again louder for Mr. Tyler Hansborough, who says Kentucky doesn't have any shooting. Meanwhile, Peyton mentioned they're shooting 38% from three. Say that again.
I just one more time for the people in the back. I think it's a bad matchup. Kentucky has the shooting that's going to make Kansas pay when they collapse down. I think overall this just isn't a good matchup for the way Kansas is playing right now. I mean, I don't know if they have enough time to really get everything flipped and figured out before Saturday. So I think overall, like I said, Kentucky runs this one.
Speaking of which, we all know the history. When you see Kansas, Kentucky match up together, there's something special and magical in there. Game day is going to be there. And Kansas last year, en route to winning the national title, passed Kentucky for the first time since 1996. There is a new leader in the clubhouse for all-time wins. During this Kentucky win streak and Kansas losing streak, the Cats have cut this lead down from 8 games to 4 with a chance to get it within 3 for the remaining rest of the year. There's a lot to be played for. The Rupp Arena is going to be loud and proud. They're already saying stand for the first 4 minutes and the last 4 minutes of the game. They're wanting to make this a crazy environment, a la when UNC came in and it was 1v2 in 2011. And this place is going to be jumping. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. for those in Central Time Zone, and 5 p.m. for those out west. Make sure you're tuning to ESPN. I think it's going to be the most watched college basketball game of the season to date, and it's going to be a fun one. 2 big-time legendary programs going head-to-head once more. Cannot wait. A lot of great basketball. The Big 12 SEC challenges this weekend. You got Indiana, Ohio State, and tonight, Indiana, Ohio State on the women's side in a top 10 matchup. A lot of great college basketball coming at you. I hope you guys enjoyed this midweek special. Like I said, we're going to be doing 2 episodes a week from here on out up until the end of the season. Cannot wait for it. But until Sunday evening, when we'll find out the results of all these games, find out the results of the Royal Rumble, and everything in between. Thank you guys for listening. Until episode 133 on Sunday, we hope you guys have a great rest of your work week, and we will catch you guys down the road.